My sister ruined my life over a man who didn't know her name, so I made him mine. Now she's posting cry-faced selfies online. My younger sister Natalie has been using the same excuse since she turned 21. She can't have her one true love, so she's free to destroy everyone else's. And I don't mean that in a sweet, still hung up on her ex sense. I mean, if you're happy, she'll find a way to make you unhappy, then blame it on her sad love story, her one true love Amanda, whom she met at a college party 4 years ago. They connected once. He never phoned, and that somehow became her origin narrative for being a part of. It began with her best friend since kindergarten, Camille. Natalie spent the weekend at Camille's apartment, and by Monday, Camille's boyfriend was texting Natalie good morning. When Camille discovered them together in her own bed, Natalie stated, "You don't understand what it's like to lose your soulmate." Camille never spoke with her again. Then came our cousin's engagement celebration. Natalie arrived in a dress that cost more than my rent, drank wine, and cornered the groom in the restroom. His exact words later. She kept saying I reminded her of someone special. Thank God he pushed her away and informed his fiancée right away. But Natalie cried to our parents about how witnessing happy couples made her feel traumatized. Mom treated her to a spa weekend to help her heal. By the time I met Amanda, I was familiar with the drill. I excluded him from family dinners, removed Natalie from my social media accounts, and informed him that my sister was going through a difficult time and needed space. For 2 years, it worked. We got engaged last spring. A small ceremony was planned, nothing extravagant, just us and our close friends. I did make one mistake, however. I addressed it during Mom's birthday supper. Natalie's eyes brightened up as if Christmas had arrived early. "I'm so happy for you," she murmured, hugging me. "When do I get to meet him?" A week later, Amanda laughed as he showed me his phone. "Your sister found me on Instagram with some fake account. Look at these messages." We read them together, mocking her desperate situation, and he swore to block her. 3 weeks before my wedding, I had the illness. Bad. Amanda was going to attend his brother's golf tournament that day, but a buddy who lived near Natalie's apartment complex phoned me to come over since I was already at my sister's. "What?" she asked. She'd noticed Amanda's Tesla in the visiting area. My chest got cold. Despite my sickness, I drove there and used the spare key Natalie had given me for emergencies. I discovered them on her couch, her head in his lap and his hand in her hair, both half-dressed. She looked up at me, phony tears already forming. "I'm so sorry," she muttered. "He just reminds me so much of Amanda." I stormed out. He did not even attempt to rescue what we had. That's when I determined she'd find out what losing is actually like. Amanda was not some mysterious figure who simply vanished. We had actually been following each other on Instagram for 3 years. We had mutual acquaintances from college and would occasionally like each other's postings, but we never really chatted. He lived 3 hours away, worked as a physical therapist, and shared footage of his golden retriever. So I slid into his DMs with a simple message. "Hey, this is weird, but my sister had a thing for you in college and just ruined my wedding. Want to help me ruin her life?" He responded in 12 minutes. "Natalie, the girl who arrived at my mother's house. I'm in." It turns out she drove to his hometown and introduced herself to Amanda's mother as if she were an old acquaintance, delivering a skewed story about how he was the love of her life and how they had been separated by circumstances. His poor mother believed it. She invited Natalie to tea. They took selfies together and she even wrote, "Reuniting with my dear future mother-in-law." Amanda sent me everything. Screenshots, videos, and even audio of his mother saying, "She seems so sincere, dear. I'm sorry if I caused any problems." That's when I realized Natalie was not going to quit. She had no idea how to love. All she knew was how to possess. And whatever she couldn't have, she destroyed. But this time, she didn't plan for 2 things. I was no longer the sister who let things slip. And Amanda was willing to participate in the game. We planned every step. He would come to see me on the weekend of the family meal. I hadn't spoken to Natalie since I found her with Amanda. But I knew she'd be there because it was my father's birthday. And no one ever misses the ideal family gathering. And me? I'd show up with Amanda, holding hands, smiling, and acting precisely as she'd imagined with him. On Friday, I picked Amanda up from the bus terminal. He was much more attractive in person, gregarious, witty, and polite, the type of man who shines naturally. Natalie could not control this man, and he was well aware of it. We practiced our lines and coordinated our gestures in the van before pulling up in front of my parents' house at 1 p.m. on Saturday. I strolled in with a new dress, high heels, and a smile on my face. Amanda held my hand as if we had been in love for years. Natalie was in the living room, laughing with my uncle when she noticed us. Her chuckle stopped in her throat. "Everyone," I declared as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "This is Amanda." The name struck her like lightning. She turned white, then red, before forcing herself to smile as if it were funny. "Amanda," she said, attempting an uneasy laugh. "Wow, what a coincidence." He smiled politely. "Hi, Natalie. Good to see you again." That annihilated any control she still claimed to have. She stuttered something, but I was already sitting alongside him, shooting photos and sharing anecdotes. My every motion was a slash to her vanity. During lunch, she attempted to converse with him, reminiscing about something from college that never existed. But Amanda kept looking at me the entire time, calling me love, and wrapping his arm around my shoulders. Natalie pushed her lips together as if swallowing glass shards each time he did this. She couldn't bear the birthday toast anymore. She locked herself inside the bathroom. I followed her. I knocked till she opened the door. "What do you want now?" she questioned, her makeup ruined and her eyes begging. "Just came to see if you're okay," I said, pretending to be concerned. After all, it must be difficult to recognize a soulmate in your sister's embrace. "You're doing this just to hurt me, and you destroyed my engagement just because you couldn't stand to see me happy. So no, Natalie. This here is justice." "He was mine," she exclaimed, pounding the wall. "I saw him first. I felt it first." "No, Natalie, you saw him once, and he never wanted you. You invented a love story in your head and used that as an excuse to be cruel to everyone around you. But now you're going to sit and watch him love me, because unlike you, I didn't have to beg." She dropped to the floor, crying aloud. Mom knocked on the door and asked whether everything was fine. I opened it and strode out, head held high. I returned to the living room and sat next to Amanda. He kissed my forehead and murmured, "She's going to lose it even more. Are you ready?" I smiled. I've never been more ready. The next day, the consequences were clear. Mom contacted me early, pleading for empathy. She claimed Natalie had spent the entire night sobbing, that she was vulnerable, and that I should not have provoked her. "Provoking?" I asked, laughing sarcastically. "You think showing up with my boyfriend at a family gathering is provoking? Or is it that Natalie just can't stand to see anyone happy without her being the center of attention?" She sighed on the other end of the line, as if I were the issue. "Honey, your sister has a sensitive heart. She gets attached easily." "Sensitive?" I interrupted. "Mom, she slept with my fiancé. She destroyed my wedding, and you're worried about her feelings?" I was feverish, alone at home, and she was lying with him on the couch remembering Amanda. "You're not going to flip this around. Look, let's talk another day." She hung up. At that point I understood no one there was going to protect me. The entire family has always treated Natalie like a broken ornament, but they forget she has claws. She'd always had them. Only now had she turned those claws on herself. On Monday, Amanda was still in town. I planned to take him to breakfast with several of my friends who had been following Natalie's activities since high school. He was a showstopper, charming, gentle, charismatic, and utterly committed to me. The girls exchanged enchanting glances. Some said, "This revenge is too beautiful." But the best part happened in the afternoon. Amanda posted an Instagram photo of us hugging at the park. Sometimes love appears when you least expect it. The remarks began discreetly with a relative, an old classmate, and heart emoticons. But then Natalie showed up. Camilla's soulmate commented, "This is disgusting. You know what he means to me." Amanda appreciated her message and responded with surgical precision. "We hooked up once, Natalie. Once. And you followed me down the street the next day. That's not love. It's an obsession." Boom. Among less than an hour, the message sparked conversation among our social circles. People who had known Natalie since high school began making comments like, "Finally someone said it. I always thought the way she talked about him was strange." Karma exists. She didn't respond to the post, but she did send me a series of WhatsApp voice messages crying and shouting, asking how I could use him against her. One of the phone messages said, "You're destroying my life for revenge." I responded with a short text. "Number, I'm just showing how to rebuild after being destroyed. Something you never knew how to do." And immediately, without ceremony, I blocked her. But I was still not done. Not yet. I knew she wouldn't give it up easy. And sure enough, on Thursday night, I received a notification that Natalie had posted on Instagram. A selfie with a sobbing face, swollen eyes, and low bedroom lighting. And the caption, "It's hard to see your sister steal the man you love. Laugh at your pain and be applauded for it. I'm not perfect, but no one deserves this." More than 1,000 likes. People are commenting, "Stay strong. Take care. You'll get through this." What hurts the most? Someone close to me reposted it. The next morning I visited my parents' residence. Mom answered the door, shocked. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk with everyone." I walked inside. Dad was inside the living room. Natalie came down the stairs with sweatpants and hair tied back, as if she were attending a funeral, and I was the victim's face. "Did something happen?" she said, almost politely. "Something did happen. Enough of you manipulating everyone and coming out like you're the poor victim." I paused in the middle of the living room, looking at both of them. "Mom, Dad, did you see the post? Do you really think it's fair? Do you remember who destroyed whose engagement?" "Honey, this isn't how you solve." Mother tried. "Number, now, you're going to listen." I turned to Natalie. "You seduced Amanda. You stabbed me in the back. You said sorry with fake tears and thought you'd continue to be the family princess, but now the tables have turned. You're the one on the ground crying, and no one's going to save you this time because it's not a sad post that will erase the screenshots, voice messages, and testimonies. Natalie, everyone realized who you really are, and the mask slipped." She remained silent, weeping. Dad looked down. "I'm tired of being the forgotten daughter while you put on little shows. Enough. The stage is mine now. And the audience? They're on my side." I departed without waiting for a response. Amanda was driving the car, the radio was on, and a cup of coffee was in the cup holder for me. "So?" he inquired. "It was beautiful," I said. "She finally saw that she has no control anymore." He smiled. "You know what? Getting revenge on her was more therapeutic than I imagined." "Yeah, and you know what's better?" "What? Part 2 is still coming?" Part 2 began with an invitation to the opening celebration for my friend Marco's new restaurant. A well-known chef in the area, with a strong presence among local influencers and extensive social media coverage. Natalie, of course, was fixated on this type of incident. She always pretended to have a life. She did not post images in store mirrors pretending to own the clothes, order expensive food to photograph, and then return it through the back door. That was it for appearances. But this time, she was not on the list. I was. Amanda was no exception. We landed on the right foot, literally. The entrance photographer stopped us to take photos, and one of them was posted on a city events profile with the caption, "Couple of the moment. Mel and Amanda steal the scene at the opening night." Natalie noticed this the next day and, of course, posted the famous indirect. Some people require the spotlight to feel alive. I prefer depth. Depth? From whom? From someone who threw herself into my fiancé's lap 3 weeks before the wedding and is now crying on the internet because a person she hardly knew has become my boyfriend? The following Saturday we attended our cousin Lena's wedding. Natalie had always felt quite close to Lena. She presumably anticipated her buddy to defuse the issue by asking me not to bring Amanda. But Lena called me personally. Mel, please come and bring him. Everyone already knows what happened, and I don't have patience to pretend anymore with Natalie. She needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her. Natalie was there alone, dressed too tight, beautiful makeup, plasticized grin, pretending she hadn't noticed us as we stepped in. Amanda embraced me about the waist and occasionally kissed my cheek, and all she could do was watch. However, the highlight that made the night memorable was the bride and groom's dance. Lena very gently invited us to dance alongside them. Amanda and I were in the center, spinning slowly when Natalie attempted to approach. For the first time, she appeared unarmed. Amanda, may I talk to you? She inquired, giving that enticing gaze. He let go of my hand, glanced at her, and spoke calmly. No. I'm busy loving your sister. Natalie froze. I took a deep breath, looked at her and said, for the first time in years, I am truly loved. Something you never understood because you only know how to misinterpret attention for love. She took 2 steps back, tears in her eyes, and stumbled on her own dress hem. Nobody laughed. It was terrible. Everyone ignored her. That hurt even more. She exited the hallway a few minutes later. And me? For the first time in a long time, I continued to dance, convinced that I had won. But my favorite portion was yet to come. A few weeks later, I was invited to participate in a podcast on overcoming obstacles and making fresh starts. I didn't use any names, but I presented the narrative of the selfish sister, the unfaithful fiancé, the plotted revenge, and, of course, the unexpected romance. The episode went viral. People from all over the country are giving me letters of congratulations and saying they identify with it. Natalie listened. I know she did since, the same day, she sent a message to my DM. Do you really need to expose yourself in this manner just to get applause? And I responded without hesitation. This is not exposure. It is liberation. I spent years in your theater. Now I own the story and the stage. She never responded. In the following days, I learnt from third parties that Natalie was becoming more reclusive. Some of the brands she was attempting to collaborate with broke off communication. People began commenting on her preoccupation with Amanda. The reputation she had worked so hard to establish through filters and ready-made sentences began to collapse. And I didn't bring it down. She sank herself. And me? I kept living. Amanda was no longer only a piece of my vengeance. The truth is that in the midst of all that upheaval, he became a safe haven. A shelter disguised as an ally, but now a true partner. And with each passing day, I realized that what Natalie attempted to destroy merely strengthened me. And she, who had always wished to win by deceit, now had only silence for company. The first time I noticed I wasn't thinking about Amanda anymore was on a regular morning, weeks after Lena married. We were inside my apartment. The sun was gently beaming through the window, and Amanda was in the kitchen, shirtless, making pancakes like he had since his first week with me. And when he sang gently a song from the 2000s and performed goofy little dances that made me giggle, I knew Amanda was nothing more than a feeble shadow in a dusty corner of my mind. It wasn't just vengeance, not anymore. Amanda held my hand even though he didn't have to. He listened to my childhood recollections with a genuine smile, despite the fact that he was previously familiar with them all. It was the way he stared at me as I was reading a book on the couch, like if he needed nothing else in the world. I did not expect this. When I phoned him in that impetuous message to assist ruin my sister's fantasy, I expected him to pretend for a time until Natalie gave up, until I felt vindicated, and then things would return to normal. But it did not return. Amanda settled into a routine. Presence. Security. He met my pals, joined my work group, and began leaving toothbrushes and t-shirts at my house. When my car broke down, he was the first to arrive with coffee and a tow truck. When I had an anxiety attack before an important presentation, he sat with me on the kitchen floor and remained silent, simply holding my hand until I could breathe again. And Amanda? Not even a consideration. Not a single comparison. Nothing. He who had once been the center of my existence was now inconsequential because I had someone who was always present. even on ordinary days. Amanda was full of future promises. Amanda's current actions. We went out to dinner one night at a newly opened restaurant in town. Nothing spectacular, just a pleasant setting and tasty cuisine. When we sat down, Amanda took my hand across the table and said, in that light tone I knew so well, "You know what's funny? We started this to fool your sister, but I never pretended anything." I remained silent for a few seconds, my heart beating. "I'm not pretending anymore either," I said with an almost ashamed smile. He laughed, raising his wine glass. "To the best revenge, then?" "No," I replied. "To what comes after them." We toast. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace, free of animosity, ghosts, and the desire for others to recognize or validate me. I was there for me. So was he. A few days later, while going through downtown, I noticed Amanda alone, walking with his head down, as if the world was too heavy. It was automatic. I looked aside. Not from suffering, but because it no longer mattered. He noticed me, paused, and almost approached to talk. But when he saw Amanda approaching and interweaving his fingers with mine, he backed off. Perhaps he finally realized there was no more space for him. That the space he squandered with falsehoods and omissions was now occupied by someone who, without promising anything, gave me everything. That night, I embraced Amanda tighter and unconsciously said, "Thank you for showing up." He stared at me with that serene smile that spoke everything, even in quiet. And I knew that vengeance brought me justice. But it was the after that brought me love. Months passed, and what began as a harsh reaction to my sister's poison evolved into the sweetest period of my life. Amanda was no longer a strategy, a maneuver, or a well-planned provocation. He was my home, my companion in stillness and laughter. We slept together virtually every night, sometimes at my house, sometimes at his, where the golden retriever insisted on sleeping between us as if he were a guardian, an accomplice in this odd story. He formally asked me to be his girlfriend on a quiet night on the couch while we ate pizza straight from the box and watched a ridiculous documentary on marine life. "Do you think it's too early for this?" he inquired, holding the pizza box on his lap and smiling from the corner of his mouth. "Or is it already too late?" "I think we've already been through worse phases than any couple together for 20 years, I said with a giggle. "It's just a title, but yes, I want to." And that's how it remained. We didn't discuss Natalie anymore. She disappeared from discussions, social media, and communications. She blocked Amanda on everything, despite the fact that he never sought to communicate. She told others that she would never forgive me, that I had stolen the love of her life just to make her feel bad about what she lacked. She didn't even admit she ruined my wedding before all of this. But, you know what? I didn't care anymore. At first, I thought I would be concerned, that I would continue to focus on the fact that she did not admit her own fault, that I would plead for an apology, which never arrived. But the fact is that the freedom I had when I stopped seeking Natalie's approval was the best gift that the entire pandemonium provided for me. She did not forgive me. She did not come to my birthday. She did not respond to my mother's Christmas messages. She stayed away, hurt and outraged. And me? I moved on. Amanda and I traveled to the countryside. This time, he met his mother officially. He helped paint the walls of the new clinic he opened. I learned how to deal with the messy dog. We gradually developed a routine that was light, honest, and free of masks and gimmicks. We were laying in the hammock one day, listening to the wind and birds, when he asked me, "Do you still think all of this was just for revenge?" After a few seconds of contemplation, I grinned and turned to face him. Maybe it started that way, but it ended up being the best thing I ever did for myself. He kissed my forehead, and we remained silent. Revenge became love. And strangely, that must have caused the most pain for Natalie. She had always wanted to be the center, the most attractive, the most sought, and the most deserving of attention. But it was off stage, away from the narrative she was constantly attempting to create, that I discovered what she had spent her entire life pretending to have. I was never the family's highlight. I was never the most adored. I was never a perfect sister, but I was the only one who understood how to turn anguish into power, rejection into liberation, and vengeance into love. And no one will ever take it away from me. 6 months later, when I thought the storms had passed, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Amanda. I did not respond the first time, or the second. On the third, Amanda appeared alongside me and just said, "Answer it. You need to close this cycle." "Hello," I said in the most bland tone possible. "Mel, it's me." His voice sounded exhausted and defeated. "Can I talk to you in person?" I considered hanging up, but Amanda was correct. There was something that had to be expressed. We agreed to meet at a neutral cafe, far from any places that evoked memories. When I arrived, he was already present. The hair is disheveled. Deep black rings. He appeared to have aged in only a few months. "Thank you for coming," he murmured, not looking me in the eye. "What do you want, Amanda?" He sighed heavily. "I wanted to apologize." "Really? And explain." "Explain what? That you were holding hands with my sister 3 weeks before our wedding?" "It wasn't like that," he muttered. "She came to me when you were sick. Said she needed to talk about something important. About you. That there were things from your past I needed to know before marrying you." I felt a knot in my stomach. Typical Natalie. "And you believed her? She brought evidence? Or at least things that seemed like evidence. Said you had destroyed some girl's life in high school. That you were vindictive, manipulative. She revealed old talks that were taken out of context." He eventually looked at me. I got confused. Scared. "And that's why you went to bed with her?" "No." He desperately shook his head. "She said she had been in love with me since we met. That she just hadn't said anything because she respected you. That if I canceled the wedding, she would be there for me. I was drinking. I was confused with everything she had told me about you." "Amanda," I interrupted. "None of that justifies what you did." "I know." Tears sprang in his eyes. 5 minutes after you left, I understood. I understood that she had manipulated me. That all of it was lies. That I had destroyed the best thing in my life because of her." I stayed silent for a long time. "You know what hurts me most, Amanda? It's not even what you did. It's that you didn't trust me. In 2 years together, you believed her words more than who I really was." He lowers his head. "I tried calling you afterward 1,000 times. I went to your house, but you were never there. Until I saw the photos with him, and I understood it was too late." "It was too late the moment you put your hand into her hair," I said, rising up. "But thank you for explaining. It helps me be sure I made the right choice." He gazed at me one last time. Are you happy with him?" I grinned for the first time in the entire talk. Happier than I imagined I could be. And I went without bitterness, knowing that certain doors must be closed before others can fully open. The conversation with my family was more difficult. It took 3 months before my mother called and asked us to speak. She recommended we have lunch together to figure things out. I encountered a different woman who was older and more exhausted. The wrinkles around her eyes appeared deeper. "How are you?" she inquired hesitantly. "Good, Mom. Very good." "And Amanda?" "He's good too. We're good." She nodded uneasily and fidgeted with her napkin. "I need to apologize to you," she ended by stating, "for all the years that I didn't see clearly." I felt my chest tightening. "Mom. No. Let me talk." She stared into my eyes for the first time. I always knew Natalie was difficult. But I thought if I gave her more attention, if I protected her more, she would change. And in the process, I neglected you. I left you to deal with the consequences of her problems alone. Tears began to pour down my cheek. After you confronted us that day, I started putting the pieces together. The friends Natalie lost. The boyfriends who disappeared. The stories that never added up. And I realized that That you two told me very different versions of the same story. And I always chose to believe hers. Why? I inquired, my voice hoarse. Because she cried louder, my mother explained, her voice breaking. Because you always seemed stronger, more capable of taking care of yourself. And I confused strength with not needing support. We sat silently for a few minutes. And now? I asked. How is Natalie? She moved to another state. She's in therapy. Said she needs to start over, away from all this. My mother paused. She asked me to tell you that she knows she was wrong. But she can't apologize to you yet. And I can't forgive yet, I admitted honestly. Maybe someday. But not now. I understand. She extended her hand across the table. Can I try to be a better mother to you? I held her hand. We can try to be a better family. But it will take time. She grinned through tears. I have time. A few weeks later, my father arrived at my house unexpectedly with a bunch of flowers and the expression of someone who didn't know what to say. Can I come in? He said timidly. Of course, Dad. Amanda was in the kitchen and respectfully welcomed my father before moving back to give us space to talk. I like him, my father remarked simply. Seems like a good man. He is. I came here because your mother said you two talked. And I realized I never apologized to you. My father was never one to say much, so this startled me. I always knew Natalie was problematic, he told me, but I thought it wasn't my problem, that it was women's business, that your mother would solve it. But in the end, you both suffered, and you especially. Dad. No, daughter. Let me finish. He sat at the edge of the sofa. I failed as a father. I failed to protect you. I failed to educate her. And I failed to teach you both that sisters should support each other, not destroy each other. I felt a lump in my throat. Your mother told me about Amanda and what she did to you. He shook his head. If it were me, I would never forgive. But you found a way to transform all that pain into something good. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of you. They were the words I'd longed my entire life to hear. Thank you, Dad. Do you think there's still time for me to be a better father? I smiled, even as my tears welled up. There's always time. That night, I told Amanda everything. He listened in quiet, only holding my hand. How do you feel? He inquired after I finished. Free, I said, startled at my own response. For the first time? Truly free. And about Natalie? I thought for a moment. I hope she finds her peace away from me. But I hope she finds it. He grinned and kissed my forehead. You're incredible. You know that? We're incredible, I clarified. Us. And it was true. Because in the end, it wasn't simply about defeating Natalie or exacting revenge on her. It was about realizing that I deserved to be loved correctly. Defended. Respected. It was about realizing that family isn't simply who you were born with, but who decides to stick by your side. It was about learning that, in order to discover the love of your life, you must first quit accepting crumbs from those who have never respected you. And today, when I woke up next to Amanda, with the dog lying at our feet, I realized all the conflicts had been worthwhile because they had got me here. To him. To us. To peace. My brother told me not to show up unless I was useful. So I showed up with proof. He forged my signature for a $600,000 loan. My brother texted, "Don't show up unless you've done something useful before Christmas." On the same day, my parents asked me to cover his loan. I sent 1 cent along with the comment, "Good luck, champ." A week later, he invited me to a peace dinner, stating, "Family should stick together." They all remained silent as I opened my luggage. The bank had just informed me that I had been listed on a 6-figure loan related to his new home. I said nothing, but handed a folder across the table and added, "I assumed you'd want a copy." I stared at the message for a whole minute, attempting to understand it in only 10 words, but it felt like a slap. No context. just a passive-aggressive command disguised as brotherly advice. That same day, as I was still half laughing and half reeling from his audacity, my phone rang again. This time, it was Mom. I didn't have to open the text to feel the change in my chest. I recognized that tone, but we need to speak softly before guilt tripping you. Her message stated, "Sweetheart, your brother's mortgage payment is due. He is stressed. Can you cover this month until he gets back on his feet?" I slumped back in my chair and stared at my cold cup of coffee. My brother Ansel, the golden child who always finds a way to avoid responsibility, was once again in need. And once again, it was up to me to assist. He had just purchased a new home 2 months earlier. Flashy, pricey, and far above his means. I knew it, as did our parents, and hey, even Ansel knew it. But he wanted to brag, to prove he was doing better than me. I accessed my banking app, scrolled down to my emergency fund account, and instead of sending him the $2,100 they had hinted at, I transferred exactly 1 penny with the comment, "Good luck, champ." The silence that followed was delightful. No phone calls, angry texts, nothing. A week later, Ansel issued an invitation to a peace dinner. He said he wanted to make things right before Christmas. The family should keep together. My parents shared the sentiment. Mom even utilized her forgiveness to provide the ultimate gift of the season. I did not respond right away. I needed to see how far this performance could go. So I showed up. The house was completely decked out with twinkling lights, candles, and Christmas platters. When I stepped in, everyone was already sitting, and I was holding my old leather satchel, which I had never taken to family dinners. Ansel opened the door himself. "Hey man, glad you came." His grin was wide, as if he'd already chosen how this night would finish, with a reconciliation scene for the family highlight reel. We sat. Small chat and uneasy smiles. Dad clinked a drink and made a statement about unity. I waited. Then, just as the turkey struck the table, I took the folder from my backpack. Cream-colored, thick, and silent. "I figured you'd want a copy," I explained, sliding it over the table. They all stared at it, as if it was about to explode. It did not. However, the goods inside were a different story. I didn't have to explain what the folder was. The bank's fraud department emblem was prominently displayed on the first page. This is my name. My signature, but it wasn't mine. A 6-figure loan I never applied for, with the address linked to the mortgage. Ansel's new home. The quiet struck like a bomb. Even Ansel's twins stopped squirming. My father reached for his glasses, trembling, and opened the folder as if he didn't already know what was inside. Ansel's smile faltered. "Wait, what is this?" "Oh, I think you know," I answered, as cool as ice. My mother gasped as she flipped over the pages. "This must be a mistake. There's no way. Ansel, tell him this isn't." But Ansel didn't say anything. He was staring at the papers, blinking as if he was attempting to turn them into something else. "This is a bank notification," I explained. "Apparently I co-signed on your mortgage, except I didn't." Dad looked up. "That can't be. You must have signed something. Maybe you just forgot." I laughed. Forgot applying for a loan I never needed? Forgot signing away 6 figures in debt for a house I'd never live in? "Let me guess," I said, concentrating on Ansel. "You used one of those old power of attorney documents Mom made me sign when she had her surgery. The one that was supposed to be temporary. The one you just happened to have a copy of." Ansel's mouth opened, closed. It was going to be temporary. I just needed help qualifying. The bank was being impossible and I thought, "You thought I wouldn't notice?" He leaned forwards, frantic now. "I was going to fix it. I just needed to get approved. Once I refinanced, it was going to be in my name alone. I swear." "My signature was used without consent on official documents," I responded with a smile. That was when Dad slapped his hand against the table. "Stop it, both of you." His voice sounded like thunder. "This is Christmas. I don't care what happened. We're not going to do this here." "Right," I answered. "Because we never do it here. We don't talk about how Ansel has been leeching off me since we were teenagers. We don't talk about how you all act like I'm some Scrooge because I won't bankroll his every bad decision." My mom's lips were trembling. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I countered. Let me take you on a little walk down memory lane. I ticked them off with my fingertips. Freshman year of college I dropped out because you asked me to help Ansel pay off his car loan after he wrecked the one you bought him. 2 years later, I co-signed for his community college. He dropped out in a semester and left me with the debt. Then the time he got evicted. Who paid for that deposit? Who gave him a job at their company, only for him to steal from petty cash? Dad appeared to want to talk, but I did not give him the opportunity. And through all of it, you kept saying the same thing. He's your brother. He's just figuring it out. Be patient. Well, guess what? He's 34 now. How much longer does he get to figure it out on my dime? Don't act like you're so perfect, Ansel says abruptly, his voice rising. You always thought you were superior to everyone since you had your act together and did not make mistakes. I turned to face him. I don't think I'm better. I just stopped expecting someone else to clean up after me. You don't understand pressure, Ansel retorted. I had to show I could build something too. I needed this house. I needed to prove I wasn't just some loser. What you did may be considered fraudulent. No, I mean, he ran his hand through his hair. It's not like that. My mother attempted to grasp for my hand. We can fix this. Let's not ruin the holiday. Ruin it? I laughed cruelly. The holiday was already ruined the moment you all sat here pretending like nothing happened, like he didn't ask me for money right after Ansel told me not to come unless I was useful. Dad's jaws tightened. He didn't mean it like that. He was stressed. He meant it exactly like that, I said. And so did I when I sent him a penny. I turned to Ansel. You have 30 days to remove my name from that loan. I've already contacted a lawyer and the bank. If you don't act, I will, and you leave me no choice but to act legally. I grabbed the folder, placed it back into my backpack, and proceeded to the door. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said a thing. And thus Christmas came to an end early. I didn't expect it to go this far. At first I truly believed I could simply walk away and let them choke on their own guilt, if they had any. But you don't grow up in a family like mine without learning the patterns. Because 2 days later the calls began. First, it was, Mom. Honey, can we talk? Your brother's going through a lot right now. Then, Dad. I think we need to sit down like men and sort this out. Then Ansel. He had the guts to send me a video message of himself sitting in his half-decorated living room, phony tears in his eyes, drinking a glass of wine as if he were in a sad movie. Look, man, I made a mistake. I panicked. I thought. You'd never say yes if I asked, and the bank was breathing down my neck. I was desperate. But it's still me, your brother. You'd really report me over this? I looked at the screen in bewilderment. Is this a mistake? You don't unintentionally fill out a multi-page mortgage application in another person's name and forge their signature. You don't mistakenly put your own family member in 6 figures of debt. He was performing his typical part as Ansel, the misunderstood idealist. The guy who always had good intentions but never quite succeeded. And everyone always let him off. Except for me. Not anymore. So I replied with my own video. Calm. Director. There are no theatrics. I've already filed the legal issue report with the bank. They're opening a formal investigation. I've submitted handwriting samples, a timeline, and email evidence. You have 10 days to remove my name. After that I escalated it legally. No more metaphors. No more let's talk about it. Just facts. The situation became more serious at that point. They showed up at my apartment the following night. I heard a beating on the door before I switched off the television. I looked through the peephole and there they were. Ansel, Mom, and Dad. I didn't open the door, so Dad shouted through it. This isn't the way a family handles things. That part made me laugh aloud. I actually had to cover my mouth. Mom's voice was next. Please, sweetie, we can't let this destroy the family. Then Ansel responded. You're really going to ruin my life over some paperwork. You're not perfect either, you know. That did it. I opened the door. The 3 of them appeared to have just been caught stealing from a church donation box. I said nothing at first. I just stood in the hallway, cold air from outdoors stroking over my legs. I finally spoke. You already did destroy the family. I'm just acknowledging it. Dad stepped forward. Son, be reasonable. You want reasonable? I inquired. Let's talk about reasonable things. I took out my phone, tapped it a couple times, then held it up. This is the recording of Ansel asking me not to show up unless I'd done something useful. Want to hear it again? Their faces moved, all three. And this, I added, switching to another app, is the email I received from the bank confirming the forgery. It's admissible. Ansel was sweating now. Come on, man, we're brothers. I stared him in the eyes. Brothers don't steal from each other. Brothers don't lie. Brothers don't pull each other into financial messes like this and then try to make it sound like a misunderstanding. He opened his lips to speak, but I silenced him. You're going to walk to your car right now. You need to. Inform the bank about the issue and take steps to fix it. You're going to have them remove my name, and if I don't get a signed notarized release form within 10 days, I go to the police. Mom gave a gasp. You wouldn't. He's your brother. Oh, I would. I'd sleep like a baby. You'll break this family, she sobbed. I tilted my head. There's nothing left to break. You just don't like seeing it shattered. And then I made the ultimate move. I reached into the envelope affixed to my doorframe and handed them a copy of my lawyer's certified notice suing Ansel for major mistakes and damages, including emotional anguish. You made adult choices. Now it's time to take responsibility. They stood there, transfixed as statues. Then I closed and locked the door and proceeded to cook popcorn. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't grind my teeth. For the first time in years, my phone stopped ringing. No daily guilt trips from Mom. There are no gaslight voicemails from Dad regarding family values. Ansel sent no text messages with passive-aggressive emojis or poor spelling. Just silence. And let me tell you something. Stillness is addictive. At first I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Perhaps the police would call. Perhaps the bank would engage in some legal maneuvering and ensnare me in red tape. But none of that occurred. What actually happened was that Ansel cracked on the 5th day after I sent the legal letter. I received a call, but it was not from him. He lacked the necessary courage. It came from his realtor. Apparently, Ansel panicked and listed the house for sale. She nicely asked if I would be willing to sign a release of interest to help speed up the transaction. I told her I'd be pleased as soon as Ansel completed the notarized documentation to remove me from the loan. Fair trade. Within 24 hours, I received a PDF that had been notarized, signed, and stamped. A clean break. I was out. But that was not the true victory. The true victory came when Dad arrived at my office. Yeah, he didn't phone or text. He just sauntered in one afternoon, as if he owned the place, and looked approximately 20 years older than I had seen him before. I was now in the middle of a customer meeting. My assistant attempted to stop him, but he pushed past and barged into the room. Son, we need to talk. The client blinked. Should I? I nodded. Take 5. Dad shut the door behind him and stared around my office as if it were an exotic world, as if he had suddenly learned his youngest son had accomplished something worthwhile. Didn't know you had this set up, he remarked, looking at the shelves. Looks professional. It is professional. He nodded, but did not sit down. Your mother's not doing well. Oh, there it was. The sympathetic angle. She's upset, he added. I think you've gone too far. We all do. I remained mute. He continued going. Ansel is talking about moving out of state. Says you've poisoned the family against him. I haven't spoken to a single relative about what happened, I said. If they're turning against him, that's his doing. Dad finally exhaled. He's still your brother. He crossed a serious line. He flinched. We raised you better than this, he stated softly. You used to be forgiving. I used to be weak. There's a difference. Once again, there is silence. Then he leaned forward. She cried, you know. Your mother. Real tears. I bet she did. After all, it's hard watching the family start standing up for myself. He looked up. I was tired. You're angry. I was. Now I'm free. He stood slowly. We were trying to hold things together. Number you were trying to hold me together so Ansel didn't have to carry anything. And then I finally spoke what I had been meaning to say for years. I'm not your insurance policy, not your second paycheck, not your plan B. I'm your son, and you treated me like a resource. He didn't respond. He just looked at me, as if he had seen a ghost. I'm not coming back, I explained. I'm done playing the good son. He went without saying anything further, and something inside of me breathed. Weeks have passed. My lawyer approved a non-disparagement provision to prevent Ansel from publicly posting sob stories on social media. The post he made about being betrayed by family disappeared overnight. I heard through the grapevine that the house sold just barely. The market had cooled. He suffered a loss. Then followed the messages. Aunt Faye says, I had no idea what he did to you. If you ever want to grab coffee, I'd love to catch up. My aunt responded, just know not everyone believed his version. I hope you're doing okay. Even my ex texted, took guts to do what you did. I never saw that strength in you before. I did not answer the majority of them, but I did grin. Because that's what happens when you stop playing the villain in someone else's redemption tale and begin crafting your own. I moved to a new location. Not far away, the same city, but with more light. Large windows. Clean the walls. There is no ghost from the past lurking in the corners. I purchased new furniture. Not second-hand. I have not borrowed from my parents. Not blessed with 1,000 strings attached. Mine. All of it. I began sleeping better. Eating healthier. My therapist even said that I appeared lighter. And here's the crazy part. I started mentoring a neighborhood kid. Smart, awkward. Perhaps a touch overly eager to please. I was reminded of myself at that age. One afternoon after I completed working on his resume, he looked up and said, how do you get so good at boundaries? I laughed. I spent 30 years learning the hard way. But do you want to know the true full circle moment? Last week I received a wedding invitation. Not Ansel's God, however. It came from one of his ex-girlfriends. He ghosted a woman 3 years ago after she told him she was pregnant. It turns out that the kid was his. It turns out that she reared that child alone. She discovered me on LinkedIn. The message contained the following. You were always the decent one. Thank you for never treating people like tools. You probably don't remember it, but when I stayed for dinner that night, you did the dishes while he watched TV. That moment stuck with me. I wasn't sure what to say. So I didn't say anything. I sat there holding the card, letting the tranquility pour over me. Because the truth is, I won. Not with vengeance. Not while shouting. Not by burning bridges. But they walked away while still holding the matches. I used to believe that being the good one was the aim. Keep your head down. Help when asked. Do not complain. Do not question. Just on giving until someone expresses gratitude or you feel deserving. That falsehood ended the day I mailed Ansel a dime. I've spent the majority of my life carrying obligations I didn't create, paying for decisions I didn't make, and absorbing blame like an emotional sponge for a family that never inquired how I was doing. And for what? Respect? Love? Belonging? I received none of those. What I received was a fake mortgage application, a holiday guilt trip, and a place at a table where everyone knew I was being duped but said nothing. Not anymore. Not again. Something changed about a minute after I said no. It wasn't simply how people viewed me, it was in how I viewed myself. I stopped apologizing for having limitations. I stopped second-guessing my instincts. I stopped trying to rescue those who would abandon me to drown as soon as it became inconvenient. Something unusual happened. The weight is lifted. I literally lost 20 pounds in 3 months without trying. My shoulders have ceased aching. My jaw stopped clenching when I slept. It turns out that carrying a full family's dysfunction on your back is far heavier than it appears. I began rebuilding both financially and personally. The apartment is basic but peaceful. I chose each item within it with purpose. No hand-me-downs. There's no guilt furniture. Nothing was bought with blood money or bribes. I bought a tiny espresso machine because I enjoy coffee, not because someone told me I needed to cut back to pay for their bailout. I joined a boxing gym not to fight someone, but to remember what it is like to stand firm. People gradually began to show up with the correct ones. My neighbor invited me to dinner with his family. I felt awkward at first, waiting for some questions and angles. But there wasn't one. Simply delicious food and laughs. One of my coworkers gave me a Christmas card and remarked, "You've been different lately, lighter, happier. I hope it's permanent." I said, "Me too." My family went quiet for a spell. The calls began to trickle in. Mom began with her quiet voice, which she employs when she wants to pretend nothing has happened. She asked if I wanted to come to Easter brunch. I asked if Ansel would be there. She replied, "Of course." I replied, "Then I won't." Then Dad called. He said he missed me. They said the house felt empty without me. I asked if he missed me, or the version of me who never said no. He hung up. Ansel never called. But I learned through the grapevine that he moved in with a buddy once the house was sold. He created a podcast about repairing your life after betrayal. The irony almost killed me. Finally, they stopped calling. The silence became a blessing. But the true ending is the one that sticks with me the most. It was a random Wednesday. Rain is tapping on my balcony. I was reading when a letter came through my postal slot. There's no return address. I opened it. Inside, there was only one page. Typed. "You accomplished what I never could. You said no. You walked away. You showed the rest of us what was possible. Thank you." No name. But I recognized who it was. My cousin. Maybe it's my aunt. Even one of Ansel's exes. Someone still imprisoned in that poisoned orbit, witnessing my escape and realizing they, too, could. I gently folded the letter and placed it in the drawer where I preserve reminders of who I used to be. Then I poured myself a drink. Not to celebrate, but to remember. Because mending doesn't imply forgetting what they did to you. It is about no longer requiring them to admit it. It is about no longer begging for affection that should have been given unconditionally. It's about becoming the person you were born to be once you stop bleeding for everyone else. I used to believe that the worst thing that could happen was being cut off from my family. Now I see that not cutting the cord would have been the worst case scenario. Now I live the truth. And the fact is simple. I'm not their wallet. I'm not theirs at all. I belong to myself. And I'll never go back. Not for money, peace, or remorse. I closed the chapter without looking back. I noticed a sudden change in my husband's behavior. He went from being deeply depressed to overly calm and happy, which seemed off. We are going through a really tough time right now, and he's been really depressed. Well, he was until 3 days ago when all of a sudden he's all calm, happy. Like a switch flipped and he's absurdly calm, as if he wasn't sad before. It sent my alarm bells ringing, but I chalked it up to him just trying to get over his emotions. We live 15 minutes from a big university where both of our children, 21 and 19, attend. They came home randomly yesterday and I was caught off guard. They said their father requested them to come over because he wanted to give them something. He proceeded to give them 2 boxes full of their childhood memories. Teddy bears, photo albums, old toys, etc. It was so odd because they are in college and one lives in a dorm and the other lives in a college apartment with friends. It would make more sense for that stuff to stay here at the house. But he seemed so insistent on giving them these relics from the past and seemed overly happy to do so. Today he stayed home from work. I work part-time and didn't have work today. He's been cleaning all day. He's always helped clean up, but today he's doing a deep clean, which is something he usually dreads doing. I'm worried. I don't know what this mood switch is, and I don't even know what to search on Google. It seems like normal stuff, but I know him and this is definitely not normal, especially the suddenness. Does anyone know what could be happening? Has this happened to anybody else? Update. 1 day later. I want to thank everyone who commented. I only had 45 comments when I decided to talk to my husband and hadn't been on Reddit since, so coming on and seeing 300 plus comments is overwhelming. After reading those comments and seeing suicide mentioned so much, I got a knot in my stomach and researched behaviors of someone ready to commit, and sure enough it matched his. I got so mad at myself for being so ignorant to behaviors of mental health crises. I went to talk to him and told him I love him so much and that if he was planning to do something to himself that he didn't have to and that I'd help him with anything. I said much more in a more loving way. He then broke down crying. Guys, I've only seen this man cry once, and that was his father's funeral, and even that was just a few tears. This was more of a cry. Full-on breakdown. I held him and we both cried. He told me that he was broken and didn't feel like he could go on and that we'd be better off without him. I vehemently told him that he was absolutely wrong and that we'd be destroyed without him. We talked for hours and I asked for his permission to call his sister, who is the only person outside of our immediate family that he trusts fully. She came over and we all talked for a while. His sister and I convinced him to let us take him to the ER. Thank you guys for this advice. After the medical and mental evaluation, they concluded he was high risk and they kept him. That opened my eyes to how bad it was. That's pretty much it. They still have him and I'm at home. His sister offered to stay with me, but I told her to go home. She has her own family and I don't want to keep her from them. I don't know what to tell our kids or even I should tell them. I'm lost and worried and just want to help my husband. Comments. Comment 1. You are an absolutely amazing human and wife. Do not assume you should have known. Most of us never even think of suicide as a real thing until it's presented like this. You did the most absolutely right thing by noticing signs and reaching to us. I'm so freaking proud of you. I know it's a lot to carry. You will go through waves of emotion. Please consider popping into a counselor just to talk it out. You will want to be strong for him, but you are human too and this is heavy. Comment 2. Very well written. I second this about a counselor or therapist. Although we have to be strong for them, sometimes it is hard to carry and there is nothing wrong with reaching out for any type of crutch during hard times. Comment 3. This post makes my day. I am so happy you got him help. You were able to do the thing that I wish I or someone else had been able to do for my friend. As for you children, you have to keep it age appropriate. With my 10-year-old, I tell them my friend was sick and he died and I miss him. With my wife, she knows the whole story. Truth is good for any relationship. Secrets kill. If your kids are older, tell them their dad is struggling with his mental health and you're getting him help. OOP. Our kids are in college so I can be more blunt about it. I'm more worried about if my husband wants them to know, you know? I wouldn't want to divulge this info to them if he didn't want to. Maybe I'm overthinking. My mind is all over the place currently. Comment 4. I would not. He's trusted you, don't abuse that trust right now. It's delicate. He gave you permission for his sister. Let the dust settle right now. Talk to a counselor. Tell them together if needed later. But this is a delicate time right now with your husband and his trust in the world. Ope. This is how I'm learning. This is such a vulnerable time for him. I don't want to let them know until I know he's okay with it. I found out my daughter wasn't mine, and that my wife had an affair with my brother for 8 years. They stole $200,000 and planned to run away. I'm writing because I still can't believe what occurred. It all began like any other month. My buddies, Howard, Jeremy, Kyle, David, John, and I, George, have known each other since we were children. We're all in our late 30s and early 40s now. We aim to meet up once a month at my beach property. It's nothing fancy. Just a comfy 2-story home that's a little weathered, but it smells like the beach, which I adore. We have an old surfboard hanging on the wall in the living room. We were all into surfing back in the day. Anyway, we all have our belongings. Howard is Mr. Organized, and everything has to be just right. He will mend any picture frame that is even a millimeter off. Jeremy, he is the joker. His jokes can be a little bit harsh at times, but he's a wonderful guy at heart. He has a scar on his arm from a fight he got into years ago, but he never talks about it. Kyle is the quiet one. He's an architect who creates stunning buildings. According to my understanding, he had a difficult upbringing, yet he grew up to be okay. David is ex-military and doesn't say much about his time in duty, but you can tell he's seen a lot. He is constructed like a brick wall. John always seemed to have it all. He's a successful lawyer who always dresses nicely and drives a luxury automobile. You know the type. Our get-togethers are rather predictable. We have an old playlist of music from our college years that we always play. Howard is in control of the grill. It's his nice grill, and no one else is permitted to use it. He is quite picky about his grilling. We normally just hang around, eat, drink some beer, and catch up. Howard was particularly worked up this month. He takes out his phone and shows us a photo of his son, Alan. In the picture, Alan is scowling and appears to be very angry. Howard claims the school principal called him. Apparently, Alan was behaving up, being impolite, not listening to teachers, and his grades were sliding. Howard was beside himself. He continued screaming, "I don't even know who this kid is anymore." He was truly devastated and enraged. We all tried to give counsel, the normal kids go through phases type of thing. Then Jeremy, being Jeremy, cracked a joke. He glanced directly at Howard and said something like, "Maybe he's not yours, man." It was a bad joke, especially given Howard's displeasure. I believe we all squirmed slightly, but it was exacerbated by the fact that he shouted it straight to Howard. Kyle then asked, in his typical quiet tone, "Why don't you all just get a DNA test? Clear the air." He stated it nonchalantly, as if he were recommending we order pizza. Initially, we all laughed it off. It appeared silly, but the more we joked about it, the more we thought, well, why not? The next day, there we were, 6 mature men stepping into a paternity testing clinic. I had to explain to the receptionist why everyone needed tests. It was very embarrassing. I attempted to make light of it, but she just gave me a blank expression. To make matters worse, Howard's brother, Harold, and his 2 nephews were with us. The boys continued to ask questions. "Why are we here, Uncle George? What are they going to do?" It was embarrassing. And, of course, with all of our families present, it evolved into a hugely awkward scene. People were clearly staring. We all took the swabs, paid the cost, and agreed to meet at John's apartment the next week to receive the findings. John's place is the polar opposite of my beach house. It's everything modern, minimalist, and spotless, almost too beautiful, as if nobody lives there. We sat around, attempting to make light talk, but everyone was plainly on edge. Howard took his findings first, as he was the one who initiated everything. He'd been putting on a brave face, but we all knew he was extremely concerned about Alan. The joke Jeremy told had gone under his skin more than he cared to admit. He ripped open the packet, and I watched his expression change from one of fear to one of sheer relief. 99.99%, he exhaled, leaning back into his chair. Alan was his. He even smiled a little, raking his hands through his hair and muttering about how he was going to ground that youngster for a month for causing him such stress. The other findings were as expected, but we kept looking at John, waiting for him to say something. He was unusually quiet, and he was clearly drinking more than he normally did. He was still standing there, and when he finally said, "Jenna isn't mine," he pushed the paper across the table, his hand shaking so violently that he nearly knocked over his beverage. What made things worse was how John just stood there, staring at nothing, as if he was trying to make sense of figures that couldn't be real. He kept whispering, 25.0%, like a broken record. In some ways, everything went downhill from there. Howard, in shock, knocked over a glass, which smashed on the floor. Jeremy, who had made the initial joke, appeared to want the earth to swallow him whole. Kyle simply closed his eyes, as if he were trying to block everything out. David looked like he was about to punch something. And me? I felt a surge of sickness, relief that my children were mine, and anguish for John. It was simply dreadful. The whole affair seemed strange. We sat for hours. The aftermath was a mess. John's wife, Alicia, went on the offense first. She stormed into John's office. I wasn't there, but I heard about it via John. She was yelling at him, calling him a liar, and making a big deal in front of his coworkers. It was very embarrassing for him. Then she attempted to persuade my wife, Maria, to her side. She came over to our house crying, attempting to create a story about John misinterpreting everything and how it was all a big mistake. However, Maria is quite sharp. She saw through Alicia's ruse quite immediately. Alicia often changed her story, contradicting herself. Maria later told me that she had gotten a horrible sense from her. Alicia's next tactic was to phone Kyle late at night. She was sobbing and virtually asking him to help her, claiming John was ruining her life. Kyle, being the nice soul he is, listened to her for a time, but made no promises. He informed me about it the next day, and we were all beginning to see how manipulative Alicia was. The reality emerged gradually at first. Alicia stated that her romance with John's brother, Stephen, was a one-time occurrence, a moment of weakness. John naturally did not believe her. He performed some research, possibly even engaged a private investigator. He wouldn't tell for certain. He discovered that the relationship was far longer and more involved than Alicia had previously admitted. The ultimate encounter occurred at their home. I was not present, but John informed us about it afterward. Alicia eventually admitted everything. The romance began before their wedding and had continued on and off for years. She also stated that Stephen had major financial issues, and she had been covertly providing him money, John's money. And things got worse. It was more than simply a casual flirtation. They had been meeting in hotels while John worked late, believing he was providing for his family. They even used John's automobile occasionally. They celebrated Jenna's birthday like a couple, snapping photos and pretending to be joyful. Days before John's family gathering, Stephen had been sending Jenna costly gifts that John could never afford, all purchased with money that had been essentially stolen from him. It appeared that he was attempting to buy Jenna's adoration. Is this the lowest blow of all? She would tell John she was working late when, in fact, she was out with Stephen. The financial side of things was completely out of control. These family loans that Alicia had been handing Stephen were massive. He'd squandered his money on gambling, lousy investments, and frivolous purchases like a nice watch and sports vehicle. He stated that these were business costs. Alicia had even forged John's signature on a few loan paperwork. They made bogus invoices and receipts to hide their tracks. John discovered emails between them in which they discussed leaving their husbands and running away together. Everything was laid out in black and white. When everything started spilling out, Alicia began hurriedly phoning everyone, attempting to mitigate the damage. She called me, my wife, and even contacted my parents. It was pathetic. The entire event culminated during Jenna's birthday celebration. It was a spectacular event at a nice restaurant. Everyone was pretending to be joyful. Stephen was present, acting smug and touchy-feely with Alicia. It made John obviously angry. He kept clenching and unclenching his hands while standing near the exit, as if waiting for Stephen to flee. Then, during the toasts, Stephen mustered the courage to stand up and thank John for being such a wonderful brother and provider. He understood it was all a deception. He handed Jenna a very expensive gift, most likely purchased using John's money. He also began bragging to some of the other guests about his own financial triumphs, making John look awful by contrast. That was the breaking moment. John stepped up, took the DNA test results from his pocket, and displayed them for everybody to see. He stated unequivocally, 25.0% probability. He then proceeded to deliver this brief, furious speech, detailing everything, Alicia and Stephen's affair, the falsehoods, and the stolen money. He even showed everyone printed out images of their emails and photos from when they were planning their future together. He made certain that everyone knew about the watch, the car, the extravagant parties, and the fictitious business trip to a tropical island. John's mother-in-law gasped and fainted. His father-in-law attempted to punch John, but fortunately, some other guests pulled him back. Stephen attempted to sneak out the back, but John's father, who, like David, is an ex-military, saw him and knocked him down. It was not pretty. Some individuals attempted to assist, while others simply stood there, mouths agape, watching the entire incident happen. The police were summoned, but they did not take any action. They said it was a domestic disagreement. I later learned that someone had recorded the entire thing on their phone and posted it online. It was not any of us. The consequences were quick and terrible. John's dad was outraged. He refused to speak with Stephen and proceeded to Stephen's flat, where his wife also lived. He grabbed all of Stephen's stuff and put them outside the apartment owned by Stephen and John's father. He subsequently wrote a note to the entire family, stating that he no longer regarded Stephen as son. He did, however, talk with John. He informed him he was disappointed with how things turned out, but he still loved him. Stephen's wife, Kelly, had a different narrative. She did more than just yell. She took action. She promptly filed for divorce and locked all of their joint accounts, barring Stephen from receiving any additional funds. She retained a lawyer and did not stop there. She went to John's house, confronted Alicia, yelled at her, and even smacked her in the face while pulling large chunks of her hair off. I do not condone violence, but I cannot say I blamed her. Kelly eventually began treatment to try to overcome the trauma. John, on the other hand, withdrew. He went to one of his beach houses, not mine, but it wasn't as comfortable for him as it had been previously. It seemed like a prison. He would not answer the phone. He would not see anyone. He ordered meals online and stared at the ocean for hours. He later informed me that he had dreams about the DNA test and the overall affair. He really considered selling the property and committing suicide somewhere in a distant wilderness, but he couldn't bring himself to do so. Too many memories. He began drinking extensively to numb the ache. He stopped shaving and changing his clothes. He simply gave up. Meanwhile, Alicia and Stephen were residing at John's house. Apparently, Stephen moved in after getting booted out of his residence. They acted as if nothing had happened. They were seen going on shopping sprees, purchasing pricey clothing and accessories. They were even plotting their escape, working out how to get away from the disaster they had created. It was horrible. They ordered pricey takeout every night while John struggled to pay his debts. They had noisy parties, which bothered the neighbors. Alicia even began remodeling Jenna's room despite knowing she might have to leave at any time. And Stephen, the jackass, began parking his automobiles in John's driveway. John started experiencing panic attacks. Just seeing Alicia and Stephen together triggered them. He stopped caring for himself. He wasn't showering or eating properly. One day, he accidentally smashed a framed photo of Jenna. He wounded his palm badly on the broken glass, but he didn't appear to notice. That's when we, his pals, realized we needed to act. We held a meeting at my residence. Howard brought all of the bank statements and, with John's assistance, the fake documents. He didn't simply show us the documents, he hurled them on the table, scattering them around. He was furious. Jeremy claimed he wanted to bash Stephen up. David, given his military background, even joked about making them disappear. I believe he was joking anyway. Kyle, who is usually so cool and controlled, was visibly angry. We spent hours discussing, fighting, and attempting to figure out what to do. We argued the legality and morality of it all. Howard completed some research, including landlord-tenant legislation and eviction procedures. He came up with an idea. Jeremy would be the muscle, so to speak. David devised a backup plan in case something went wrong. We even developed a code word, pineapple, to indicate that the job had been completed. I was just sitting there, Pikachu-faced, listening to everything. The next step was to get John out of the way and avoid unintentionally turning up until we finished what we were going to do. We didn't simply invite him over for a cookout since it would have been too suspicious. Kyle feigned to seek John's legal counsel on a serious property matter. Given John's occupation, it was a valid reason. We kept John engaged with food and alcohol while also keeping the conversation going, distracting him from what was truly going on. Meanwhile, the rest of us visited John's residence. The confrontation was fierce. Alicia instantly began playing the victim, crying and claiming we had no right to be there. Stephen attempted to seem strong, but you could see fear in his eyes. We took pictures and films of everything, documenting the chaos and the fancy stuff they purchased with John's money. We discovered additional evidence, including images of them on secret travels and documentation indicating that they intended to buy a property together. We didn't just neatly pack their possessions when we were clearing them out. We hurled them out the window, resulting in a massive pile of garments, shoes, and whatever else we could find. Jeremy was raving at Stephen, calling him every term in the book and threatening him if he ever approached John or Jenna again. I discovered a stockpile of valuable items that Alicia had been hiding. I flung it at her feet, saying, "Here's your blood money." Alicia began weeping hysterically, yelling and threatening to call the police. Jeremy stepped in and gently explained her that the house was exclusively in John's name, that they had signed a prenuptial agreement before getting married, and that she had no legal right to be there. Howard finally got in Stephen's face, forcing him up against the garage door and calling him a lowlife. Kyle and John waited at my beach house. I sent him the word pineapple. Finally, he informed John that it was time to return him to his true home. Kyle described John as a jumble of emotions, including rage, relief, anxiety, and remorse. He was driving wildly, speeding, slowing, and then speeding up again. He continued to murmur to himself, revisiting the last 8 years of his life in his thoughts, attempting to make sense of it all. He was scared of what this could do to Jenna. When they arrived at the house, it was quite the sight. Alicia and Stephen's belongings, including clothing, furniture, and golf equipment, were strewn around the front lawn. The neighbors were outside, watching the entire event. It felt like a yard sale from hell. Alicia stood there, red-faced and enraged, yelling at John. She was blaming him for everything, claiming he was wrecking her life and was a horrible guy. Stephen stood behind her, gazing down at the ground, as if humiliated. He didn't say anything. John did not even recognize them. He strolled right by them, as if they were invisible. He went into the home. It was disturbingly silent. Of course, the furniture remained, but everything else, all the small personal touches that made it their home, had vanished. It was like coming into a set model home, not the one he'd shared with his family for years. He moved from room to room, slowly taking everything in. The emptiness was the worst part. He told me later that was when it hit him. They were genuinely gone. While the turmoil erupted at John's house that day, Jenna was safe at her best friend's house for a playdate. Her friend's mother was one of the few parents at Jenna's school who saw through Alicia's act and was always sympathetic to John. She had planned this playdate knowing what was going to happen at the house, because we had told her about it. She returned perplexed. John needed to explain everything. "Is Uncle Stephen my true father?" she asked. John felt nauseous. Then she asked, "Don't you love me anymore?" He broke down, telling her that nothing could ever change his feelings for her. But then Alicia returned, seized Jenna by force, and we couldn't stop her. John spent the first night alone. The next day, he told us he had ended up sitting on Jenna's bed, marveling at her toys and drawings. It was one of the most challenging things he'd ever done. He spent the following few weeks in his daughter's room, and it was a blur. John wasn't doing well. He had both good and bad days. I believe that seeing a therapist helped him. He attempted to keep himself busy by focusing on his work. He began playing his guitar again, which he hadn't done in years. He even went surfing a few times, hoping to relive part of his former life. We, his pals, supported him every step of the way. We frequently checked on him, made sure he was eating, and hauled him out of the home when necessary. The biggest worry that troubled John, the one he couldn't shake, was, what does Jenna think of me now? He was consumed by the dread that she blamed him, that she believed he had abandoned her. He kept wondering, does she believe I abandoned her? Will she ever forgive me for what occurred? He couldn't ask her directly just yet. He had missed her school dance presentation, which she had been practicing for months. He felt bad about it, but he didn't know how to confront her or explain why he hadn't been there. The guilt was crushing. He simply wanted to cuddle his little baby and tell her everything was fine, but he wasn't sure whether it was. He wasn't sure if he'd be okay. However, John could not have fought this fight alone. None of us could have handled something like this on our own, and it wasn't only the guys who rallied around John. Our spouses were also great. They observed how much John was hurting and stepped up big time. They didn't just say they were sorry. They did something. They confronted Alicia immediately. They made it clear to her that they understood exactly what she had done and would not allow her get away with it. They posed a formidable challenge. They also cared for John. They put together a care box for him, complete with his favorite snacks, novels, and a handwritten note from each of them expressing their support. They took turns fixing him dinner, ensuring that he ate something other than takeaway. They made sure he wasn't alone by inviting him to family gatherings and movie nights, anything to lift his spirits. They treated him like family because that is who he was. I don't think John expected this kind of support, and it made a significant difference. It demonstrated that he was not alone in this fight. We, his pals, had also been quietly preparing. We had been combining our money since we knew John would need an excellent counsel. We had done our research and located someone who specialized in high-conflict divorce and custody situations. This lawyer was known for winning and obtaining outcomes. We presented John with a retainer fee, explaining that we were all in this together. John hesitated at first. He was frightened of making matters worse for Jenna. He was frightened of losing her entirely. He kept saying, "What if I fight this and lose? What if she ends up hating me even more?" We understood his concerns, But we refused to give up. We reminded him that being a father was about love, being present for your child, and providing a secure and nurturing environment. We told him that he needed to choose to be Jenna's father every day, no matter what. We persuaded him that he deserved to be in her life, and she deserved to be with him. Eventually, John consented. He was still afraid, but also determined. He was prepared to fight for Jenna. He wanted the judge to understand the truth about Alicia and Stephen, including their falsehoods, manipulation, and greed. He wished to protect Jenna from them. The divorce procedure was a nightmare for John. The lawyer we hired predicted it would take 6 to 8 months, but it ended up taking about 18 months. Alicia battled him every step of the way. She opposed everything, including the asset distribution and custody arrangements, and even attempted to claim that the house was partially hers. It was not. John acquired it from his grandma before they got married. She dragged out every single meeting, misscheduled appointments, and repeatedly requested paperwork extensions. Every time we thought it was nearly done, Alicia threw another wrench in the works. She sought to imply John was an unfit parent because he worked too much. Rich, coming from someone who has been sneaking around with his sibling. She even attempted to use his drinking against him, despite the fact that he had only recently begun drinking frequently after learning of her betrayal. But when John's lawyer showed all of the fake documents to the court, things became serious quickly. Alicia falsified John's signature on at least 10 distinct loan documents totaling more than $200,000. The judge saw this as more than just a divorce issue. It was outright fraud. They discovered evidence that she had been moving money to Stephen for years, using fictitious business invoices to conceal their activities. The district attorney became involved after John's lawyer provided the material. Alicia eventually faced criminal accusations for fraud and forgery. She attempted to imply that Stephen had pressed her into it. She ultimately agreed to a plea deal that included 3 years of probation, obligatory financial counseling, and repayment of every dime she had stolen. The judge also limited her visitation rights with Jenna to every other weekend, during daylight hours. There were no overnight stays or trips out of state for Jenna, and all visits were overseen by a court-appointed guardian. It was harsh, yet considering what she'd done, she got off easy. Stephen had less luck with the court system than Alicia. When the proof of financial fraud was revealed, he was charged with faking documents and stealing John's money, just like she was. But the judge didn't buy his excuses. Stephen was sentenced to 2 years in jail, while Alicia received probation. He, like Alicia, had to repay all they'd stolen, but being in jail prevented him from doing so immediately away. Stephen and Alicia's relationship came apart dramatically when they no longer had John's money to play with and were instead arrested. Alicia began blaming Stephen for everything, claiming he had deceived her. Stephen couldn't take being broke. They had a massive fight in court, yelling about how they had ruined each other's lives. After 16 months of misery, John finally got divorced. We went out to celebrate on the day it was finalized. John did not say anything that night. He just sat there, looking fatigued and relieved. It was over. He might now begin rebuilding his life. Jenna, that's the bit that tears my heart the most, was struggling with things for a while. Who would not? A therapist helped her comprehend that Stephen was her biological father, but John was still her father. John told me about a conversation they had where Jenna questioned if she could still call him dad. He claimed he cried for an hour after that. She didn't want much to do with Stephen, which astonished everyone but John. She rapidly realized that Stephen had contributed to the harm of her father, the only real father she had ever known. Stephen tried to give her expensive gifts during supervised visits, but she refused them. Smart youngster. She told the court-appointed supervisor that she did not want to spend any time with Stephen at all. Life gradually returned to a new normal. We had one more picnic at my beach property, which served as a sort of celebration. John thanked us for all we had done. He made a self-deprecating joke, indicating that he was finally recuperating. He was playing with the youngsters, throwing them in the air and making them giggle. It was evident how much he enjoyed being a father. He looked at us and said, "You guys are my family." And he meant it. We were more than just friends. We were brothers, pulled together by this strange, incredible event. If there is a moral to the story, it is that good friends will be there for you no matter what happens. Even if your life collapses, they will be there to assist you pick up the pieces. I took legal action against my sister-in-law after she tampered with my prenatal medication because I refused to name my baby after her ex-husband. My husband Luke, 29M, and I, 29F, are expecting our first child. After years of struggle with infertility, we were overjoyed to learn that I was pregnant. However, what should have been a happy occasion turned into a nightmare because of my sister-in-law, Lila, 34F, who had a terrible history, including a painful divorce after having an affair with her ex-husband's brother. While her ex-husband Joe moved on, Lila stayed unmarried, holding on to the concept of him as a member of the family despite the affair. Lila looked delighted and wanted to be a part of my pregnancy. Initially, I assumed she was simply delighted to be an aunt, but her pleasure quickly took an unusual turn. She continued offering baby names, but they were all variations of Joe's. Despite my uneasiness, I attempted to explain to her that Luke and I had previously decided not to name our kid after anyone in the family. I wanted something unique and interesting. Lila was hurt, but I assumed she'd understand. However, she continued to send us baby name lists related to Joe, believing that it would honor the family and be meaningful to them. I set boundaries, but she did not follow them. Then things took a worrying turn. I had a little pregnancy concern and was provided medicine. Lila volunteered to pick it up for me, and I agreed. The next day, after taking the prescription she provided, I felt dizzy and sick. I ended up in the emergency room, where doctors determined that the medication I was given was not what I had been prescribed. It was a considerably higher and riskier dosage for pregnancy. Initially, I assumed it was a pharmacy error, but my suspicions rose as Lila was the one who received the pills. I called her to see whether she had noticed anything unusual. Her response astonished me. She laughed at first, saying she chose a higher amount on her own because she wanted me to pay for not naming my child after her ex. She began laughing, but then went on to add that she received a bigger dose since she believed it would benefit me more. She spoke it carelessly, without regard for the potential ramifications. I was very irritated. I ended up in the ER, and she didn't appear to realize how severe her actions were. She stated she only wanted to help. I informed her that what she did was unlawful and dangerous, and it may have harmed me and my kid. Only then did she begin to apologize, but it seemed insincere. At that point, I realized I had to act. After discussing it with Luke, we decided to take legal action. We filed a police report, documented everything, and notified her that we would be pursuing charges for tampering with my prescription. I believed that this was the only way to make her understand how terrible the issue was. This circumstance has undoubtedly strained relations within the family. Lila is attempting to paint herself as the victim, claiming she had no idea it would upset me. But I can't accept it. If she truly cared about my health, she would not have changed my medicine without my knowledge, especially since I am pregnant. Some families believe we are going too far by involving the police, claiming that she was only trying to help. However, tampering with drugs is a severe matter, and good intentions do not excuse it. Now I'm torn. I'm worried I'm overreacting, especially since some family members are upset with me and claim it's harming our family. However, I believe she breached a significant threshold that cannot be overlooked. What she did may have hurt me or my baby. If I let this go, it would feel like I am enabling her to intervene in my life and jeopardize our safety simply because she felt she was helpful. I hate that it has come to this, but I feel like I have no option. Perhaps suffering legal consequences will make her realize how serious her acts were. Still, I'm questioning everything, and I'd appreciate any other perspectives. So, Reddit, AITA for pursuing legal action against my sister-in-law for interfering with my meds simply because I refused to name my child after her ex. Update 1. Hello everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for your concern regarding my health. This means a lot to me. I'm feeling a lot better now, luckily. My physicians have kept a tight check on me, and I am now back on my original medication, which is safe for my pregnancy. I wanted to give you an update on my problem with my sister-in-law Lila. Since I mentioned pursuing legal action against her for interfering with my medicine in my last report, things have shifted in unexpected ways. I was still absorbing what Lila had done and dealing with the ramifications when she contacted me. She called to apologize, stating she didn't intend for things to escalate and thought she was helpful. Initially, I wanted to trust her. I thought she was sincerely remorseful for interfering with my meds, but just as I was about to accept her apologies, she said something that completely took me off guard. She dismissed me, saying that I should realize that she merely wanted to help. It felt false, as if she was attempting to transfer blame rather than accept responsibility. That wasn't the worst part. Shortly after our conversation, I began hearing reports from other family members about what Lila had said. She was telling everyone that my baby wasn't Luke's. She said this was the reason I did not want to name the baby after a family member. I couldn't believe it. Not only was she attempting to spin the tale about her activities, but she was also putting my